Forum, a forum to discuss truth in a friendly surrounding like we do at home at the kitchen table. I'm your host, Dr. Smith, along with my co-host, Deacon DJ Jones. We will lead compelling, relatable, and honest conversations. We will talk about wealth, economics, how to solve our community problems. Our guests will range from community leaders and professionals and real people whose stories will touch and inspire you. The vision is to catalyze and energize and bring people together. If you'd like to be a guest on the kitchen table, you may email us at kingdombuildersworldwide2@gmail.com or call us at 269-282-1490. I'm excited today to have two guests. I call them my friends. The great commissioner, my brother from another mother, Steve Frisbee, and the energetic, exciting Sherry Sherburn. But before I bring y'all on, I got to introduce my main man, my guest, Deacon DJ Jones. What's happening, man?
Not much, Bishop. How you doing?
I don't know. I heard you guys in the blue room or the green room talking about the little basketball. So before we even bring on everybody, I heard you and Brother Steve talking about basketball. What y'all got to say about y'all brackets since we're on the subject? What y'all want to talk about?
I didn't have any brackets this year. I just kind of rooting for teams, but Wolverines are still in it, playing strong. So we're in the Sweet 16.
In my bracket.
All right. Before we even get into a really deep conversation, exciting conversation, I would like to, again, honor and recognize Women's History Month. And because we do have a wonderful, powerful lady sitting next to my right and left to Brother Steve, Women's History Month. What is your whole thought about that? It started on March 1st. Jimmy Carter was a part of it, March 31. How could we honor women, period? What would be your way of honoring, since you're the only one sitting at this table?
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Truthfully, as I look at the role that women have played throughout history and are currently playing today in the world that we live in, if you've missed an opportunity that's been presented, you aren't paying attention, right? And as women have unique experiences in the workforce, they have unique experiences in family life, they have unique experiences in a life of faith, they have the opportunity to expand in ways that maybe some really never thought they could. And I think part of the Women's History Month, when I look at it and I reflect back at it, is I look at the opportunities that we all have, that if you feel as if you're missing one, call me and I'll help you. There's women all over our community that have worked really hard to stand up, stand out, to make a difference, to figure out how we can take all of those that are interested in the same direction and go that way. So I think that's enough.
That's it, and congratulations, and we celebrate you all. Hey, you all are looking at a very diverse table today, but this is not the first time we've done this. Deacon Jones and I have been doing this talk show now for several years, and then prior to the pandemic, we took a break, or after the pandemic, or during the pandemic. So we've had different people, but we don't just have guests because it's something we do. We've established relationships. And some of you all have heard those hot topics we've been talking about this whole several months and just throughout our world. And I'm going to have I seriously call him my brother from another mother. Really, I do. But he's Steve Frisbee. Matter of fact, he and I and Deacon Jones went to one of the Michigan games.
Mm-hmm. Michigan Northwestern. So we genuinely have a relationship. But outside of the relationship, we understand that we're not going to always agree. And I think that's the beauty of life, that we can agree to disagree, and you don't have to always, because then that would kind of contradicts the creation of individuality. But Brother Steve, tell us how you and I met. Why don't you tell the audience what happened? I mean, let's just be real transparent. What took place? He is also the vice president of the Republican Party, but he's also the chairman of the Calhoun County. And then he does a lot of other powerful stuff. We're going to talk about that later. But how did we meet? Because a lot of folks in the audience be wondering, well, where connection come from? Connection is everything. Relationship is everything, and that's how you build. Brother Steve.
Yes, sir. So I believe the first time we actually met was at a political gathering.
Yeah.
And it was very brief, and you spoke your mind about a couple of issues and wanted to connect with people. The next time we really got to meet was when you brought a whole group of folks to the Kingdom Builders and wanted to talk about what was going on in the world today. And that was at the advent of what was going on in Minnesota with the Floyd issue and some other things. And it was just a time of upheaval in this country. And you wanted to talk to us. And it's probably one of the highlights of my life in that day, because you hit some key points for me that just brought it all home, that I wasn't crazy, that you and I could be the same, and that was the goal. And from that day forward, we've just paved a relationship that's built on trust, built on character, built on mutual goals of getting ahead and helping each other while we're doing it, and helping others while we're doing it. So and DJ became part of that, into that process easily, because we figured out that my oldest brother, who passed away, was a basketball official, and DJ actually reffed games together. So it's just been a great relationship, and we talked at an event probably for an hour one day just about that relationship with my now deceased brother. So it's just been it's a friendship. That's all it is, and it's a relationship, like you said. And that's what's key. And you talked about how we don't have to argue about everything, and that's the environment we live in today. It's everybody's dug in on one side or the other. Nobody wants to give an inch, and you've given me perspective. I've given you perspective, and sometimes we meet in the middle, and sometimes we go, no, that's not quite right, and I like that.
Yes. Now, Ms. Sherry, how did we meet? I can remember, but can you remember?
Well, if it's...
Steve has something to do with
I
it,
know
too,
he
didn't
did.
he? Yeah.
I was at an event meeting with a couple of other folks, and you were having lunch with Steve.
I was.
Yes, you were.
He was having lunch with me.
Oh, okay. He was having lunch with you.
Yes.
I'm sure that's the way it was. And then I had the unique opportunity to have him introduce me to you.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you did, and it's been joyful. And certainly very much appreciate the opportunity to have had time to speak with you, get to know you, have you on my show, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you for
Good.
that. I appreciate that.
So before we get into probably just a little bit of something really heavy, make you exhale, let's kind of talk about a few things about our guests, because I think it's important and I want you all to hear about it. I'm going to go back and forth, and then Deacon Jones, if you want to chime in or you see something, please share that. Mr. Frisbee, you're known in Calhoun County as the commissioner of the District 4.
Yep.
Which is the Bedford area. Well, I'm going to let him tell you, but I know for sure he's the Bedford area because he covers my mother. And he takes care of my mother. And that, listen, now I don't want y'all to get mad at my mom, because, matter of fact, if you get mad at my mom, then you got a problem with me. Now, my mom is a lifelong Democrat, and she'll probably remain a Democrat. And that's just who my mom is, and I love my mom for that. But she's also becoming like her son. You know, we start to vote for people who we think will help. Well, I said, Mom, I want you to put Steve Frisbee's sign in your yard. She said, no way. That's a Republican. I said, Mom, let me tell you what Steve do for your son. Ever since then, my man Steve's sign is in Bedford Township, 360 Algonquin. But anyway, what area do you cover, sir?
So all of Bedford Township, all of Penfield Township, and all of Convis Township.
Convis, wow, you way out there.
Yeah, well, it's just one township over from Penfield, on the top tier of townships on the very north side.
Okay. So you do represent some of the watching audience here.
Yeah.
And what are some of the projects you work on as a commissioner?
Oh man, lots. So I'm the chair of the board, so that makes me part of the budget committee, the chair of the budget committee. I'm on the 911 board, the administrator controller oversight and evaluation committee. I have 9 committees total that I'm and we all do. We all have a bunch of committees. But we all have things that we do within our own district of meeting with constituents and helping them out. We like to be a resource, most of us do as commissioners. When you have a problem, is there a way the county can help? And that's one of my main roles, I think, as a commissioner, is to connect people with other folks in the county that can help them solve a problem, or let them know they can't solve a problem.
Sherry, you have love. You have a love for the senior population in Calhoun County. Can you share with us your work with the Senior Times?
Sure.
And the North Point Woods Senior Living Community, I think.
Sure. Yeah, so Senior Times now is working on year 27. Actually 29, I'm sorry. Year 29. So we've been doing it almost 30 years. The whole intention behind the publication is really to look towards all the living that we have left to do. So whether that means that it's a short time or whether that means you got 40 years left to go, there's something valuable that we can learn from life in that time frame and enjoy. And frankly, I want to make sure folks know that I don't do it all by myself. We have a great staff that helps bring everything that we do together. Speaking of North Point Woods, yep, I'm on that board, and certainly want to make sure that the individuals that are residents of the facility try to have the best life that they can where they're at and just really enjoy it. And again, it's not something I do all by myself, but I do have a strong passion for mature adults, and they make me smile.
You and your team have made strides to help seniors and their families deal with dementia.
Oh, yeah.
That's a very difficult subject to address. How do you handle it?
Well, you know, my interest and passion in it began in a very early age, and I didn't realize that that's what it was until I was in college and found out that that's what it was. And, you know, having experienced living and loving with individuals that have dementia, there's a whole different level of conversation that you begin to have. There is a completely different way of reaching out not only to the loved one themselves, but also the rest of the caregivers who need that additional support. And we do that all through Miles for Memories. Steve is on the leadership team with me for Miles for Memories. He's just been very impactful in all the different things that we could do. The team for Miles for Memories, again, is just an amazing group of individuals who bring their passions and directions for the needs of the seniors in our community, really sometimes because of personal interests and sometimes because of who they experience in a working environment. But wrapping that up, we've got lifestyle programs, we've got tech programs, we've got programs to help bringing people back home. We have successfully brought 133 people back home that have wandered without an unintended ride in an ambulance
or an ER visit.
An ER visit. You know, that's really important if it's your family member that's wandered and you get a call and say, hey, we found them.
I got a question for Sherry. Is there some type of training that someone has to go through before they're able to help care for somebody with dementia?
Well, there is, depending on what kind of a facility that you work with, there are different levels of state-required hours that you have to go through training for. When you are a caregiver for an in-home situation, most of the in-home facilities or organizations will provide some level of training. It's not as regulated as it might be if you want to become a gerontologist. It's a little bit different. And you know, the biggest thing that I would say from my personal experience is that you just have to have a heart, right? You have to have a passion for that particular individual because they can tell right away if you're approaching them lovingly or whether they automatically become afraid.
So is Calhoun County a good place for people living with dementia and Alzheimer's, and are we a safe community for them? And can you talk a little about the history of dementia in Calhoun County and why we decided to have Alzheimer's? Is it Alzheimer's or Alzheimer's?
Alzheimer's.
With a T?
Nope, there's a Z.
Alzheimer's, okay. Organization. What made us decide to do all of that?
So there is, the Alzheimer's Association is a worldwide or at least nationwide organization, and there are different things that will happen with that organization in a variety of different communities and counties across even the state of Michigan. The difference between the Alzheimer's Association, whereby they are looking towards trying to search out a cure and find some ways to reach out to help folks. The Miles for Memories program is really tailored towards reaching the person right where they have needs today, right?
Okay.
So while it is important that we find a cure, and we would encourage folks to still work towards that end, but if your loved one is dealing with a certain kind of dementia today, you need help today. You need support as a caregiver today. Your loved one might need to know which direction to go for care specifically. So we can't wait for that. And this program allows Calhoun County participants to experience all of the things that we have very painstakingly put together based on the research to be supportive of the family and the individual.
And all the dollars that we raise for Miles for Memory stay in Calhoun County, with the exception of what we give Michigan State, who's in collaboration with Michigan and Wayne State, working on research projects as well. All those dollars stay here. So things like music. So we put earphones into nursing homes or other communities where it's period music. So somebody that's 80-some, 90, almost 90 years old right now and has dementia, who's non-communicative, will respond to music that they recognize from their childhood or their young adulthood that they connect to. And you'll see them start to move. They may even try to talk. That's how I got involved with Miles for Memories. There was a group of folks, a dementia patient, a caregiver, and a family member. And they put a vase of flowers up in front, and everybody had an easel and started painting. And
Awesome.
most of those dementia patients couldn't communicate or wouldn't communicate before that. They started painting the vase, and what you found was everybody said, well, that dementia patient is not an artist, they won't be able to do this. One, they started painting, and they started painting very well. But as they painted, they started to communicate with their family. It was crazy.
Good.
That's how she got me hooked into Miles for Memories. And you just watch these people come out of their dementia entrapment and start to talk with their loved one. And the loved one was crying. We were all crying. And it was like, it was the most unbelievable thing. You look for these sophisticated medical things to happen, and it was as easy as painting on an easel that connected a family member for a very short time back with a dementia patient who hadn't been connected for a long time.
So we're going to go back to that with Sherry and kind of talk to the black community on that topic. We're going to switch back to Brother Steve. Steve, how did you get involved in a life care ambulance?
Oh man, a long time ago. Number one, I just completed year 38 back in February.
Wow.
So I started right out of high school. My father was a fire chief in Colon, little town in St. Joseph County, and he had become an EMT, and I wanted to join the fire department and become an EMT, and I did it. And he encouraged me. I was the only one of 6 kids who did it, so I think he felt a little proud about that. But as I got going into the CMT program, a nurse who was part of the group on the rescue squad said, hey, have you ever thought about being a paramedic? And I was 18, 19 years old, not knowing what I wanted to do. I'd watched Johnny and Roy growing up, Emergency Squad 51, thinking that would be cool. Never really thought about that as a career. And she said, I think you should explore it. And I did, and I've never looked back.
So my research director told me that they recently saw a report in a city commission meeting packet that listed out the number of life care ambulance calls and runs per area in the city for 1 month time. The area of Goodale to Michigan Avenue and from North Avenue to Limit Street had twice the number of life care ambulance call than any other area in the city limits. What do you see these calls consist of?
Same as every other area in the city, just more of them. A lot of them in that particular district probably come from, they're usually an acute crisis that somebody's calling us for, but sometimes they're stemming out of a long-term healthcare issue that hasn't been managed well, has gotten out of hand. We get overdoses all over the city. It's not.
Wow.
So, in all ages and demographics. So, it's just more. There's more concentration of people right there, and we've always had more responses within that district. It's also the easiest area for us to serve. They get some of the best service in town. because we're so close to the hospital, and we're responding from there often.
So, y'all, this is what relationship is all about. So, Steve and I have talked about this, and he shared his knowledge, and everybody knows because of the pandemic, in some cases, we have short staff, and we don't have enough people. So the shortage is huge. So, he and I came together. It was all his doing, so he get the credit, and other people involved. He thought about, well, Bishop, maybe we could do something at your place, at our place, Kingdom Builders, and tell us about this program we putting together.
Yeah, so go back for just a second. 40% of my full-time positions at Life Care Ambulance are unfilled.
Y'all hear that? 40%.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So that means this old guy is out working on an ambulance a lot. I'm still a paramedic, and I still enjoy that, but it means I don't get to do my real job of being the vice president either. So, but we're keeping it going, and that's what we have to do. So one of the goals of our organization is, and we've always said this, is to look more like our community. We've always struggled to do that. We don't know the roadblocks of why. It's not for a lack of trying, but when I built a relationship with you and vice versa, I saw that as a great opportunity for you to connect us into a community that we've not been connected to, in spite of some other efforts. So what we're going to do is put on an EMT academy, and what that EMT training consists of about 240, 260 hours of training normally, but it's spread out over a semester at, say, KCC. But who we're targeting to get into this class are folks that are typically underemployed. They're trapped in an underemployment situation where they can't afford to take time off from work and miss that work, because every hour missed is a huge part of their paycheck. And they really can't afford to go to a really fine institution in KCC. They have a wonderful EMT program, EMT and paramedic program. But it's how do you connect in today's world when you're short-staffed, people are struggling to make it ahead, who want to get ahead, and create an opportunity for them. Sometimes you have to step around what's normally in place and say, here's what we're going to do. So I brainstormed a little bit and said, here's what I'd like to do to my boss, CEO and COO, and said, here's what I'm thinking. I'd like to bring 20 people into Kingdom Builders. Tino's going to help me. The Women's Co-op, which is a great program as well, is helping me find folks. Community Action, people just reaching out to you and I are coming up. We're going to pay them $400 a week to take this EMT class for 9 weeks. They're going to go to school 4 days a week. We'll give them the 5th day optional if they want to study and make it. And the hook is they got to come to work for me for 2 years.
Question, Steve. So EMTs are considered first responders.
Yep.
In your experience, let's say you have a class of 20.
Yeah.
What's the percentage of people that don't end up finishing the program? Because you have to have a passion for it, for one.
Yep.
That's not something you can just sign up for, and you got to have a kind of a love or a desire to want to help people.
Absolutely. And I would say so there's a regulated pass rate in the state of Michigan. So training programs of Emergent Health Partners, our parent organization at Life Care now, is going to be putting this program on through their EMS education license. So they have to have a 70% pass rate to maintain their license from the state of Michigan to be able to put this on. So one of the things we're doing is as we get people signed up, and we're going to gather them up, but they're going to do pre-testing to make sure that they can read and reading comprehension at the 10th grade level, which is what the EMT course is taught at. They're gonna understand all their commitments that they're getting themselves into, and if they don't pass, they're still going to have a job. So I have jobs at Life Care Ambulance that don't require a license, and that is in what we call the MTS, the Mobility Transport Service, and it's wheelchair buses and vans going around doing routes and individual pickups and drop-offs for people in wheelchairs. So we'll put you to work.
So Deacon, I need you to talk to the audience. This is a program that's coming to Kingdom Builders. Excellent question. We already have a big pool of people that have already called. Give your spiel about this is an opportunity, but there's responsibility that comes with it. Why is it important? The salary, Brother Steve said between $45,000 a year. Share that with them. Share that to your community, and then everyone else that is listening, why this is an opportunity we do not want to miss.
Well, again, opportunities like this don't come often, and fortunately, Steve has been gracious enough to start this program at Kingdom Builders. Just like any other job, you have to go into it with a positive attitude. And you heard what Steve said. There's some things you got to go through. First of all, you have to want to do it. It's an opportunity to make some good money for those who meet that criteria. And I'm sure there's opportunity in the future to make even more money. So anyone who is interested, please come on down to Kingdom Builders. Get a hold of the front office. You have a great instructor here. I know the guy personally, and I can tell you right now, he's not one that's going to let you fail. Okay, if you fail, it's because you didn't want to pass. Okay, Steve is a no-fail kind of guy.
So those are all the fluff questions for Brother Steve. I got a few more fluffs.
I want to say one thing to him.
All right, go ahead.
So you talked about other opportunities, and what happens is an EMT, that's a beginning and entryway. I'm a paramedic. That's about a 4-semester class at KCC currently. And what we do with our EMTs at Life Care and within EHP, Emergent Health Partners, is if you're a good employee and you want to go on to the paramedic level, we'll pay for that. Paramedics are they're topping out right almost $70,000 a year. And I have more than a couple handfuls that are working their tails off and are going to make $120,000 to $130,000 this year.
That's good money.
That's darn good money, and it's good benefits. It's not easy job. It's not easy hours sitting around doing nothing. But if you want to work and you want to earn and get ahead, and that's how you build wealth in your family.
Absolutely.
Work hard. And that's how I got there. That's how you got there.
Absolutely.
And that's how Tino and Sherry got there as well.
So because we're going to have to get ready to come to a closing, but we're not there yet, I see my camera lady Gertie get her little scoring card and tell me, hurry up. I heard one of your hobbies is grilling. I heard, these are all rumors.
Well, does it show?
I heard the barbecue ribs should be award-winning. Well, I'm talking to you, Steve. Is that?
I think Terrace Todd was hungry the day he ate my ribs, but they were pretty darn good. I smoke them.
We got to speak up louder because of Facebook, you guys.
I smoke my ribs for a few hours and get them really good. I dry rub them, and then I put the sauce on the side. If you want barbecue sauce on them, that's your business.
Okay.
I don't use it.
So, Sherry, back to you. Has dementia impacted the Black community locally? And if so, what are some of the steps my audience can take if they have loved ones who's in the early stage of dementia?
So yes, to answer your question, it has. The most important thing is that people be willing to be open-minded, right? And you need to be willing to look at the way maybe yourself or maybe your loved one or even your neighbor has begun to do things in a way that's a little different or unusual for them. Maybe it's not just their memory that's been challenged, but they're confused about the process of doing something they've done all their lives, right? So when my mother-in-law could not remember how to make a pie, you just go and to have her say she's never made one, you have to go, all right, I need to address this a little bit differently, and I need to be willing to hear what she's saying and what she's not saying, and really step up and, frankly, make the next step happen. So for some folks, taking the next step, going straight to a clinical situation where you get different things diagnosed, which is one of those things that we really do need to do. There are a variety of home tests that you can also do, right? So maybe you want to be a super sleuth, right? And so you're going to just call me up, and I'm going to give you the direct website to do a couple of these home tests, right?
Okay.
To have a caregiver do a short little 88 test. And to evaluate your responses today, evaluate them again in 3 months and potentially in 6 months if it's not becoming extremely evident that things are changing along the way. Even those small changes will be some things that you can bring forward to your physician as you start to go forward in that direction.
So if somebody want to give a test, we can just call your office?
You can call my office. I can give you the links to the different sites that you can go ahead and look them up. We do have one book called the Senior Housing Directory, and in the directory it also lists several of the different tests that are sometimes either independently done at home, or you might hear a skilled facility talk about having given a particular test. We'll just give you some background about why they did that test and what stands out. But the SAGE test in particular, it really has a question on there about several of the most common types of dementia, and you find out why they're asking those questions that seem so silly, but they're there for a reason.
Okay, so can you talk about your AccessVision series you did on Black America last month?
You know, that was quite the delight, and I really enjoyed that particular week. Mike from here was very helpful and instrumental in bringing forth some of the guests. And, you know, one of the things that I treasure is recognizing that while we do have challenges, I'm not suggesting that we don't, we also have individuals who have pushed through some of those challenges, really put those challenges to the test, and have become very successful. And so I think sometimes not only do we need to evaluate the challenges that we've been through, but also recognize and praise the successes and learn from that. And how can I do something different so that maybe I can go in that direction? You know, the program that Steve was just talking about, all three of you have been talking about, that's going to be made available at Kingdom Builders, is another great step towards making a change to have a successful outcome.
So how can we help in the work you do at Sing Magazine? Tell us about me talking to you. You mentioned about your family, so if you want to talk about the history of Sing Magazine, please do so. But then the senior time and your AccessVision, all that great stuff you do. How can someone work with you or help you or support that?
You know, I love to talk to just about anybody. So if you have an idea, if you have a thought, if you have a conversation that you'd like to have, I truly like the folks that I'm having a conversation with to feel like right now they're the only person that matters. And we need to learn what I can learn from you. I want to share back in the same direction anything that I can share. And if there's community issues that somehow we can take on and tackle together, because it takes more than one, it takes a village in many cases to make a change, to make a difference, to be willing to open a door and step right on through it. So as a community, I don't know that I'd call myself an activist, but a leader of sorts, I just really want to be as helpful as I can in any particular way. Senior Times is targeted at seniors. Scene is targeted at, you know, the community at large. And what do you want to know? What do you want to do? What do you want to say? And don't tell me there's nothing to do in Battle Creek, because I've already done that article.
And the other thing that she does is if you have a passion and knowledge about something and you want to write an article in one of those publications, she'd be more than happy to entertain that idea.
Yeah.
So everyone knows that there was $30-point-something million through the ARPA fund, which was federal funded, that was given to the city of Battle Creek. And there were organizations that applied for funds, and there was a conversation on my previous talk show. Some individuals were offended with what took place, and there were apologies that was given. And so we're going to stop and stay there. But what I wanted to do was, I wanted to bring in, I'm just being honest, I wanted to bring in white people, diverse. I want to bring in another group. Because what I love about the world we live in is it's okay to have your opinion. I struggle when white people have to walk on tight lines, but I struggle when blacks have to walk. We have to get to a point where we're no longer the color and we look at the greater good, but we do want to address the fact that we all have our own historical pain, challenges, and trials. So basically, the vote went out, things were said, but there was a key term that I did bring up, and I believe Pastor McQuaid brought up as well. And so I gave my panel a task. There's a term called meritorious manumission. And I decided that because I'm dealing with individuals that love history. See, what I do is I don't take he say, she say. I will connect the dots to history. If it's not history, I'm not going to tell you. Or I would just say that's just my opinion. And like my father said, who I love and respect, and I know this is a talk show, and I know I'm a preacher, so I have to be careful when I say this, but opinion is like a, you know what, everybody got one.
Amen.
Doesn't mean it's truth. And a lot of times we are living, I hope I didn't offend you when I said that.
Well, it took me a while to figure out what you were saying.
Okay. So before I go there, Deacon, you've been with me from day one. You took some of the flap, some of the slapping. How did you survive it? I see you're still here.
Yes.
How did you deal with the fact? Because we were not trying to hurt anybody.
Right.
So tell me how you dealt with it. Did you hide? Did you go into hibernation? What happened to you?
No, I mean, there was no reason for me to hide. Nothing like that would keep me from living my normal life in the community or the city of Battle Creek. I got several phone calls from people, and they wanted some explanation on the show. Yeah. Some things were said, and I brought some clarity to what the meaning of some of the conversation meant.
Yes.
Some people took it personal. I think sometimes when we hear certain words, that's all we hear. All of a sudden, our listening and our understanding stop, and then we completely or automatically get offended. So I just explained the purpose and the meaning of the comment, the content of what was said, and I'm assuming that everything was okay because they said, okay, I didn't know, I didn't understand. Now, if the individuals that asked me that are still upset and mad, I don't know what they are. Okay. But I gave them the truth. I told them when things that were said, what it meant.
Okay.
Wasn't calling anybody out of their name.
Okay.
It was statements.
So what I want to do is, because we have about 20 minutes, I'm going to share historical data. I'm going to ask Brother Steve and Sister Sherry to share their thoughts from what their worldview is, as well as ours. Because the ultimate goal is we all need to have these conversations if we're going to help our community. Because the truth is, I'm not going anywhere. Sherry's not going anywhere, and we can't live in these private worlds. You don't win that way. So I took historical issues because we're very strong in military. We love our country. Deacon Jones, a veteran, and other people. So we love our country. So both American soldiers that was held in North Korea, which is the prisoner of war, we call it POW, those camps in the 1950s, I am saying, before you shoot me, that could be very germane or similar to the enslavement because of what happened. Let me explain what I mean. I'm talking psychologically, I'm talking about the manipulation, I'm talking about all in a parallel way. Meaning the communist North Korea army and its Chinese consort used brainwashing on American soldiers. So before I get into black and white, we can just say we would agree that there were a lot of brainwashing that took place with our American soldiers. Me just reading his biography, what was his name? Not Dole, the other. McCain. See, we have to read. I read his autobiography, I read his bibliography, and so he talked so much about it. So what I did was, I read his book, and he shared about the brainwashing thing, and he shared about the pain, and he talked about, but at the end, they had therapy. Now, I'm not saying his is less than the others, but would it be fair to ask, now I'm talking to them as white leaders in the community, and this is the curveball they didn't know I was going to throw at them. Would you all think if slavery was that bad, that there could have been some mental challenges, even though it wasn't me, it was 30, 40, 50 years ago, is it possible for me to be impacted by that situation? what you think, honestly. We do not stone our guests. These are the conversations we have to have, and these are the tough ones. They came on the show because they don't mind challenging it, because I'm going to love them either way. Is it possible McCain went through it? Mm-hmm. I didn't really go through it, but psychologically, I know it. Is there any difference to that? Look, Steve ready to jump in, but it ain't your turn. You go first.
Okay, well, let me start with saying I'm not a counselor.
Okay.
I don't play one on TV, but
Okay.
I'm loving having a conversation. The reality is we have no way of understanding how the impact of an event is going to change the lives of an individual.
Okay.
And then
That's
once
fair.
that happens, how that event is going to then make its way through the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. So in some cases, we will find individuals, and again, I am not a counselor, but we will find individuals that found the route through this and did really well, and their families grew and flourished quite well. And yet there are some individuals that didn't respond as well, and I'm not sure why that is, and that's probably where that counselor comes into play. And because of the impact on that individual, the impact on then the next generation and the next generation that we could not let go of does carry through. But let me just also say that we have tried, I believe, we have tried to take steps across the board to try to find out what kinds of issues are being really absorbing a person's inability to move past that, so that we can start to make change and have a conversation about that change. So yes, it can still, I think, have an impact going forward, but we have lots of opportunities to learn how to take that off track. So those resources are indeed here, and some folks have not taken advantage of them, I don't think, because they don't feel like they have access to them, they aren't aware of them, they aren't sure how to change that trajectory on their own, and I think that can indeed happen.
So I think if you're still stuck in the 1800s,
Mm-hmm.
you've probably not devised a way to make it part of your history and your heritage,
Sure.
but become successful. And some folks like, and it doesn't matter who, if the 2,000 prisoners had come back and lived in woe is me, that's where they'd have been stuck. If descendants of slaves are stuck in the woe is me, that's where they're going to be stuck. There's no reason to be. There's nothing holding you back in this country. I always tell people when they come to work at Life Care, if they say, I'll ask them, what job do you want? When you've been here a while, and they'll say, well, I want to be the vice president. The only person holding you back is you. So find that opportunity, find that pathway, and sometimes it's not of the least resistance. It's not easy, but everybody has challenges. I don't care. So whoever committed slavery was evil, right? Whoever put 2,000 people, and there were whites, blacks, Asians, you name it, as POWs, they were evil people too. But it's in the past. We got to move past it. We got to figure out that pathway forward and not dwell on it and use it as an excuse to remain where we're stuck at and blaming others.
You gotta talk louder because it's Facebook. So Deacon Jones, being an African American man, sitting next to your Caucasian American man, or let's just say sitting next to your white brother and your black brother, how do you explain what he just said to the mass of people that may say, I don't know, Steve, it's hard. How do you deal with that? Because these are the real conversations that you got to talk about. And you got to talk about it in the spirit of love, but be willing to hear both sides and not cut anybody off. So, DJ, your thoughts?
I like what Sherry said, and I also like and respect what Steve said, respect what they both said. And you can't be stuck on the past. You can't dwell on what happened to our ancestors in the 1800s. However, some people, it did have an effect on their thinking to this day. I think a lot of it has to do with how you were taught and how you perceive that teaching. A lot of it is upbringing, the type of things you heard in your home growing up. And we always talked about it on the show, going through school, listening to learning black literature and black history from different teachers. And then from hearing that and then your experiences, not everything that happened is because you were being treated because you were different because you were black. Maybe it's something you did wrong, and we shouldn't use that as a crutch. But all of a sudden, don't stay there and then fix what you messed up. So to say that, I'm upset about slavery in 2022, it was wrong. Okay, I'm not a slave. I didn't live back in those days. However, I don't use that as a crutch or an excuse for me not being able to press forward and move ahead. Because number one, I had God on my side, and God doesn't see color. So really, if you really, really, really think about it, you know what? If I haven't succeeded in life, it's my own fault. It's not Steve's ancestors' fault or Sherry's ancestors' fault. It's my own. Okay?
So I'm sitting there with Brother Steve, and Brother Steve comes in, and he brings in all of his paraphernalia. We're not talking drugs, you guys. He brings in all his paraphernalias, and he got a bag of Annies. Is it called Annie?
Yeah.
He got
mannequins.
Huh?
Mannequins.
But they call them Annie, and they're all white. And it's 2022. Oh. So I asked Brother Steve, because I know Steve didn't mean Steve just being a dude and doing his job. He probably care less. But I'm sitting there saying, why isn't there any awareness of diverse? Before Steve answered that, Sherry, was that a fair right for me to have that question? Was that fair for me to notice Annie was all white in 2022? The mannequins?
Well, we talked about this all being a matter of opinion in the first place. And so, you know what? Your opinion is your opinion. And I think in this case it was a great one. So, but we don't have to agree or anything. So, here's the thing. Sometimes we do what we do because it's what we've always done, right? And the mannequins have showed up because that's what's always been there, right? And then when it's time to order new ones, you have someone who comes along and says, had you ever thought about it? I'm like, never even noticed, right? So thank you for bringing it up. Now we can make some changes as we go forward, as we make some of those purchases in the future.
Ordered. So I want y'all to see how things work. Instead of he and I fighting each other and saying, man, get out of my office, look what he did. What you order, man?
Black skins.
We've always had them, so
it's a simple process.
Yeah.
I'm not downgrading the pain because the pain is real. But as Deacon Jones stated, if we continue to dwell on the past, the scripture says, forget those things which are behind. Mm-hmm. In other words, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm not saying Steve made it clear it was evil on both sides. But the reality is, if I'm going to go forward, I can't live my life in the rearview mirror. Mm-hmm. And instead of me looking at the mannequins and blaming Steve, why am I blaming Steve when he created the program that's going to create a job for about $45,000 if you complete your program and the potential to go further? That was just an old system.
Yeah.
That's how you change systems when there's communication. And that's the key, Deacon. That's Absolutely. Why they're on the show, because that's how you change. You can't get offended, or if you get offended, still be willing to talk about it and put your, I gotta say this, put your big
girl panties on.
Okay,
there you go. Put your big girl panties on.
And your boys put theirs on. And let's talk. And let's talk, y'all, because that's how you solve problems. What y'all thought about that? Let me know where I'm at, sister. What y'all thought about just talking to each other and dealing with issues and just let's move forward?
I think communication has to happen in both directions, and I think you were reaching out to them first, but I'm going to jump in. And when we start being willing to have that two-way conversation, then we come to solutions together that benefit both of us in a better way. So as I talk to you, we find out different things that are going on. I talk to you, and we make changes. And the things that impact me directly, I have choices to make on how I'm going to respond to what those happen to be. I choose to have a positive perspective going forward. I choose, even as we look at dementia as an example, we talk about all of the challenging things that happens with a person with dementia and the person who wanders, because we have a program for that. But the good news about someone who wanders is that they're still mobile. There are still things that we can do with them. Mm-hmm. There are still ways that we can engage them and have some meaningful activities going on for that person, instead of dwelling on the fact that they're wandering and I need to make sure they stay home. So communication. goes both ways.
So you've taught me so many things. And one of the things was when slaves were released, the Emancipation Proclamation, and Juneteenth Day, just set free. Some of them not a stitch of clothing on their back and not given anything. And you compared them to folks who had been set free before, Indians, and given land and a mule and things like that. So I understand how we may have, as a country, provided freedom that day, but we didn't give you a pathway to success. It was go figure it out. And so I understand some of why people are saying, hey, we didn't have a fair chance. We didn't have the same, as you like to say. I want to just start at the starting line with you,
Yes.
side by side, and I want to have the same finish line.
Yes, sir.
And we both run at the same gun
Yes.
fire.
Yes.
That's it.
And I love
because you'll out-hustle people, I'll out-hustle
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
and we'll get ahead just because we're hard workers and we want to get ahead.
Yeah.
But I understand why people get caught up in it, but it's past that. And, you know, how you build wealth in your family, like, my parents are going to leave me and my siblings almost nothing, right? We're going to have to close out their estate, and we're going to pay for their funerals, and we're going to be done. So we might break even. And I'm okay with that. But my goal was to create wealth in my family. And my wife's goal was to create wealth in our family. So how do you do that? You work hard, you save for the future, you put it in vehicles that you can turn over to your family instead of just relying on a pension. You figure out a way to independently invest money so that when you die, DJ, somebody's going to turn to your family and say, here's what your father left you. And we've had that opportunity for a long time. It's time to get engaged. It's time to figure it out. And if you don't know how, that's fine. There's people in the community that will talk to you about how do you get ahead financially and how do you create wealth in your family. And it doesn't have to be millions. Everybody starts off small and build it up. But that's how you build wealth in a family. Hard work, and pass it along.
Deacon, what you want to say before we get to our closing?
You know, communicating is how you get things done. Communicating is not arguing. Communicating is not bickering. You know, you don't have to always agree. But if you don't come together and talk, then, you know, you can't accomplish anything. So, you know, in order for me to get to know Steve, I have to build that relationship. How can I build a relationship unless I communicate with you? Right. So communication is the key to everything. You got to talk. You got to open your mouth. You got to speak.
And we proved that. I mean, we didn't know each other.
Right.
And we figured out that we had something in common.
Right.
And we talked and talked and talked. And now we can just talk to each other.
Right.
About tough subjects.
Right. Yeah. So we related, and we came together and talked. It's a relationship.
I love it.
Last statement from Sherry, because our time is gearing in.
Okay, so I had a couple of individuals on my show at one point in time, and I had said something to that particular person on the show, and from me it was coming as if it was a compliment. And she took it as a complete insult. And she let me know that right there on the show. And to that end, one, I apologize, but I then say, you have to help me know how to tell you that I am impressed by what you do, because clearly I am not saying it well. So you have to communicate that back to me. You have to teach me how to say this to you. And her response was, well, you just better go figure it out. And I went, that doesn't work. That ended the conversation, and we didn't get to keep it going. I continued with that after the show was over with, but that's my point. You know, I am eagerly trying to learn how to say it better, how to say it right, how to say it so that it's received well, rather than unintentionally trying to insult someone, and that was never my intention.
This was a great show. We have to continue to revisit these type of conversations. That statement that I just heard is what Steve and I have developed. We get it. I don't feel less than anyone. And so it's fair that whites don't see me as the arrogant one. At the same time, it's fair for blacks not to see me as the sellout, and vice versa. Steve beat me, outperformed me, cool. That's the way the game is. Work hard, take advantage of opportunities. So, Sherry made it clear, there are programs to deal with therapy, okay? So, if the pain is real, I'm going to introduce you to Christ, but you may have another mechanism. I am not confined by my ancestors. I cherish it. I'm glad I'm a black American. But I'm American. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I love what Smokey Robinson said. I love who I am, and I love that I'm here in this country, and this is still the greatest country ever to live. And so with that being said, that's me talking. That's not a sellout. That's not some cop-out. I just enjoy being me, and I'm glad for people like Steve and Sherry that is willing to come on the show and have a conversation. We're at the kitchen table. We say stuff we don't want folks to know about. So today we were smart. We was careful. Listen, y'all, the show was great. One thing you have to know where you are in life. You have to learn how to network and power. That's what we're doing today. Sherry is one of the reasons why there's an elevator that's being placed in our facility. One of the reasons, okay? Relationship. Steve is one reason why we have an ambulance opportunity to have a full-time job. Network in power. And then I may be a reason why they do what they do. That's the way life is. Beautiful things. You got to have a goal. You got to have a map. You got to know where you're going in life. Chronicles chapter 12:32 said, Issachar understood the time. I know what time it is. It's 2022. I got work to do. I always give honor to my ancestors. On my maternal side of the family, Ruby Elizabeth Perry and Leo Dell Perry Sr. They're the grandparents to my mother. That's my mom's parents. And my beloved mom who's still living, she's my shero. I thank God for her. Love her to death, and she's still with us. And then my paternal side is my grandmother, Gussie Smith, and my grandfather, where I got my name from, Edward West Smith. She came out of down south. She was a maid, and she learned from the white man that she lived with how to invest in money. And she taught me how to do it. Y'all, I'm making that money. I'm going to make the money. Because without the money, you can't do certain things. And the opportunity is available. And then, of course, my father, the late Hugh Daniel Smith. Hey, y'all, thank you for coming on the show. We love you. Sherry, we always kind of join hands together like in a prayer. So let's touch each other. Look at this picture, y'all. Isn't that a beautiful color? Wow. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this privilege. Thank you for Steve. Thank you for Sherry. And thank you for DJ. America, the city of Battle Creek, our mayor, our city manager, foundation leaders, officer, whoever's involved in leadership, let us all come together and let's make a difference. Thank you for this. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.